At 80 years old, Robert Plant, the voice of Led Zeppelin, the golden god of rock, sat in a quiet corner of a radio studio. He wasn't screaming into a mic or belting out "whole lot of love." He was calm, reflective, and when the host asked, "Who are your favorite female rock voices of all time?" the Plant didn't rush. He looked down, took a deep breath, and whispered, "I've waited a lifetime to answer this." The room fell silent. Then he said her name, and everyone stopped. Janis Joplin. Plant's eyes lit up with both admiration and a touch of sadness. She didn't just sing, she cried through every note. She let it all out. There were no walls, no filter, just pure emotion. He paused. The first time I heard "Piece of My Heart," I froze. I was just a kid thinking I was tough, but that voice knocked me flat. Robert admitted he never got to meet her. We circled the same festivals, same world, but I was always too nervous. What could I say to someone that raw, that real? He laughed softly. Janis sang like she was burning from the inside out. But she wasn't the only one. Robert continued, saying, "There's another voice that came out of nowhere and made me feel something I hadn't felt in years." The host leaned in. "Who?" Robert smiled and said, "Keep listening." She walked into the studio and changed everything. "The second voice," Plant said, "is Stevie Nicks." When Robert first heard Fleetwood Mac's Rumors, he wasn't expecting much. We were touring constantly. I was burnt out. People kept saying, "You've got to hear this album." I finally put it on one night in a hotel room, and then she started to sing. He described hearing Dreams for the first time, like walking into a storm. Her voice didn't shout, it didn't beg, it floated, like mist across the sea. Plant leaned forward. But it had power, real power, like she knew something you didn't and wouldn't tell you. Unless you listened closely. Then came the moment that changed everything. One day, I visited a studio in Los Angeles, just to say hi to some friends. I didn't know she was there. Stevie Nicks walked in, wearing an all-black scarf around her neck, holding a cup of tea. She didn't even see me at first, just went straight to the mic. No warm-up, nothing. Then she sang. Robert shook his head. She sang something I didn't recognize. Maybe it was new, but I swear, for those few minutes, nobody else in the world existed. We were all just floating. That day stuck with him. Decades later, he could still hear it. "I've seen dragons breathe fire," he said, "but Stevie's whisper could burn you just the same." Still, he said the most surprising voice he ever loved. Wasn't a rock star at all. She wasn't supposed to be there. Number 3? Robert Plant smiled again. "That's easy. Annie Lennox." But the way he discovered her, total accident. In the early 80s, Robert had just finished a session in London. I was exhausted. I just wanted a pint and silence. A friend dragged him to a local club. He said, "You've got to hear this new duo. They're weird, but something's going on." Robert wasn't interested, but as he sat in the back with his drink, the lights dimmed, and a woman with short red hair walked onto the stage. She wasn't loud, she didn't strut, but there was something in her eyes. Then Annie Lennox opened her mouth and sang "Sweet Dreams Are Made of This." Plant dropped his glass. It was like a ghost had walked in, but not the scary kind, the beautiful kind, the kind that reminds you of something you forgot or someone you lost. He said he stood there, stunned. That voice, icy but full of fire, cold but not heartless. I'd never heard anything like it, and even though she wasn't from the blues world Plant loved, she still had soul, loads of it, just wrapped in something modern, sleek, sharp. But what happened after the show? She vanished, Plant said. No crowd, no chaos, just disappeared like a dream. He never forgot it. And still, there were 3 more voices that left Robert Plant utterly speechless, including one who once opened for him and almost stole the show. She opened for me and almost stole the show. Robert Plant grinned like he was remembering something forbidden. This one's special," he said. Her name is Chrissie Hynde. Yes, the leader of the Pretenders. Tough, unapologetic, and for one short tour, Robert Plant's opening act. It was the early '80s, he said. I was doing my solo stuff. Chrissie and the Pretenders joined us for a few dates. I thought, a good warm-up for the crowd. He paused, then laughed. First night, she walked out, guitar strapped on like it was part of her body. She didn't ask for permission. She didn't need to. The moment she opened her mouth, the room belonged to her. Robert stood at the side of the stage, stunned. She wasn't screaming. She wasn't begging. She just delivered. Every word hit like a punch. He remembered one specific song, Brass in Pocket. She didn't just sing it. She owned it. She was saying, "Look at me. I've got something you want, and you can't have it unless I say so." It was raw confidence. The Plant respected that. And when she stepped off stage, she nodded at me just once, didn't need to say a word. He later told her, "You remind me of myself when I was younger, but with better aim." Robert knew she could have been bigger than almost anyone. But Chrissie never chased fame. She chased the truth. That's rare. There were only 2 voices left on his list. And one, he said, was the only woman who outsang Led Zeppelin on the same bill. She made the crowd forget Zeppelin. Robert Plant leaned in and dropped the name like it was a secret weapon. Patti Smith. He'd seen her live in New York in the late '70s, not long before Led Zeppelin's momentum began to waver. We were on top of the world, or so we thought. But then Patti got on stage. She wasn't polished. She wasn't pretty in the traditional sense. But the moment she grabbed the mic, it was like a lightning bolt hit the room. Patti's voice wasn't smooth. It was jagged, angry, beautifully broken. She didn't perform the music, Plant said. She became it. He remembered watching her do Gloria, not the sweet, old-school version, her version, dark, fierce, unforgiving. "I stood in the crowd," Robert said, "and I realized something painful but important. I couldn't do what she just did. I couldn't take the pain and twist it into poetry that raw." He wasn't jealous. He was inspired. Patti reminded me that rock and roll isn't about perfect notes or polished image. It's about the truth. Ugly, loud, aching truth. She bled on stage, and the audience loved her for it. After the show, he tried to say hello, but Patti was gone. No limo, no champagne, just out the back door, like she came from the shadows and vanished again. That voice never left him, but there was still one voice that Robert Plant said shook him to the core. A woman whose voice he still dreams about. She was the one. Robert Plant's final choice wasn't a shock. It was a confession. "Joni Mitchell," he whispered. She was the one. Not because she had the loudest voice, not because she sold out stadiums, but because, in Robert's words, she made the quiet things matter. He first heard Blue on vinyl while lying on a couch in a friend's flat after a long tour. The sun was coming in through the blinds. I was tired, burned out. And then Joni started to sing. It was the river, a quiet, aching piano, and that voice. I started crying, Robert admitted. I didn't know why, I just did. He couldn't explain it. He didn't want to. She sang about longing, about distance, about truth, but she didn't scream. She whispered it, like it was too fragile to say out loud. Joni's voice wasn't just a sound. It was a memory. Years later, Robert finally met her. She was quiet, warm, and smarter than all of us put together. They talked about poetry, about travel, and when Robert confessed she changed his life, Joni just smiled. She said, "We're all just tuning our instruments, aren't we?" Robert never forgot it. Now at 80, he still listens to her records, still feels something he can't quite name. She was the one who made me believe a song doesn't have to explode to shake the earth. Sometimes, a whisper can move mountains. The radio interview ended. The cameras stopped rolling. But Robert Plant had one last thing to say, off the record. He leaned toward the producer and said, "There are many voices I've loved, but these women, they weren't just singers, they were truth-tellers." He looked away and added, "In a world full of noise, they taught me the power of silence, the strength in restraint, the beauty of honesty." And that's the truth most people missed, because even the loudest rock god can still be humbled by a quiet voice that sings straight to the soul. Robert Plant did. And just named 6 voices, he told 6 love stories, and through them we learned the heart of a legend. Even at 80, Robert Plant isn't done listening, and maybe neither are we. As the radio crew packed up their gear, someone off-camera asked Plant a simple question. "Is there one female voice you think the world forgot? Someone who never got the credit she deserved?" Robert didn't even blink. Sandy Denny. To many casual fans, her name doesn't spark recognition. But to Robert Plant, and to anyone who lived through the golden age of British folk rock, Sandy Denny was something close to magic. She had the voice of an old soul trapped in a young heart, Robert said. There was weight in every word she sang. He remembered hearing her for the first time at the Fairport Convention in 1969. She sang "Who Knows Where the Time Goes," and I swear the room changed temperature. That voice, soft, strong, timeless, like autumn wind. But here's the part few people know. Sandy Denny is the only guest vocalist in Led Zeppelin's entire catalog. She joined Robert and Jimmy Page on The Battle of Evermore. She wasn't just filling in a harmony, Robert explained. She was the other half of the myth. That song needed mystery, it needed grace, and only Sandy could give it that. But her story turned tragic. She died young, just 31, after a fall that ended her life too soon. And with her, Robert said, went one of the greatest voices Britain ever produced. He looked down, voice quieter now. If I could bring one voice back from the dead just to hear one more song, it would be hers. Robert never got to say goodbye. But maybe, he said, you don't say goodbye to a voice like that. Maybe it just becomes part of you. Back in the car, driving away from the studio, Robert Plant stared out the window. He wasn't thinking about platinum records or sold-out arenas. He was thinking about voices, not the loudest, not the most famous, the real ones: Janice, Stevie, Annie, Chrissy, Patty, Joni, Sandy. Each one carved into his soul like verses of a song only he could hear. "They're not just singers," he said softly. "They're chapters of my life, of music history, of everything I ever felt, but didn't have the words for." Even now he listens, on vinyl, on long drives, on rainy days. Because sometimes, Robert said, a voice you love is like an old friend. It shows up when you need it most. He smiled, rolled down the window, and let the wind carry the last word. Still singing,